because I'll sit in this room and I'll do a thing where I'll give a talk about sex. Like, how many of you are comfortable with sex? Y'all raise your hand. I'll say, okay, then start telling me about your fantasies. And then all of a sudden, well, you know, like here with everybody? Yeah, everybody. Let's hear it. We are doing a Fearless family gathering. These are clients that have done work with Fearless and have done some advanced work. And we once a quarter, basically, we do a gathering where they come down and we do a free workshop where they sit down and talk about their experiences, how they've changed, how they've grown, the different things that have happened in their life. So we're taking a break from that right now. I'm going to come up, I'm going to answer some questions for everybody, and we're going to start right away. So does anybody have a question they want to get answered? Go for it.
You told me once when you were like doing a lot of work on yourself, you set yourself challenges and go and do something that really took you out of your comfort zone. Can you share some of those with us?
So he said when in the past I had shared that I did a lot of challenges to take myself out of my comfort zone, and I would set challenges. I don't remember specifically telling you that, but I have done stuff like that. I mean, a lot of it centered around, well, a lot of it did center around women. Like I did the whole Lance Mason approach, the hottest girl of the day. You know, you'd run around, you'd look for the hottest girl you saw that day, and if you found one, you would approach her, but then the rest of the day you didn't have to approach anybody unless you saw somebody hotter, and then you had to go again. And it didn't matter if she was down the street or around the corner, you had to do that. One time I went out, and this is something I was doing with another program, and I had a lot of fear of being homeless. I've always had that. My mother moved a lot, and because of that, every year us moving because of financial reasons and problems like that, I always had these stories around running out of money. So it didn't matter how much money I had in the bank, the story still came up. So one of the things I did was I went out and found a homeless person, and I actually ended up giving him some clothes, traded clothes with him, found a clean one, and went out and was homeless for a day. And I spent the day panhandling, basically living on the streets, meeting other homeless people, looking homeless, acting homeless, being homeless for the day. And I had to learn to panhandle. It was terrifying at first because it brought up a lot of stories. Asking people for $1 brought up more stories almost than asking a girl for a date. At that, it was really trippy because I felt everybody looking at me like that homeless guy that was begging for money. And so I had to really learn. I had to sit there, and throughout the day, the first stage of that was really interesting because I had to learn to relax. I had to calm myself down because I was feeling really uncomfortable. And then the second stage of that was trying to figure out why nobody was giving me $1. I was like, it was just $1. And I was like, okay, I'm not getting $1 from anybody. And I knew it was because I was being nervous and I was trying to get. So then I had to settle that down. And then I started figuring out, okay, how can I provide people some value so they want to give me $1, so they feel, you know, that I'm giving of good energy to them. So I had to start changing my state, changing how I was being. And I went through a whole phase of that. And that was fascinating for me. I did start to get a lot more money after that, and it kept increasing as I made little tiny subtle adjustments. And the fascinating part was meeting all these other homeless people and how generous a lot of them were. You know, one other guy wanted to share his pizza with me. I didn't want to take his food, but wanted to share his pizza with me. And another guy was I saw that he was collecting all this clothes that people were giving away, and he was taking it to other homeless shelters for other homeless people. And I saw that a lot of these people were actually doing a lot of really good stuff, and it was really neat to see. There were a few people out there that were quite crazy. That was for sure. So I had to watch them and be careful because of how they were being. But that day was a fascinating experiential day for me, and it helped me a lot. And then I helped somebody else do the same process who was going through the same thing. It was a girl. So I spent the day kind of watching her from a distance because it was interesting to see the dynamics that she was going through versus me as a guy. Because now all of a sudden guys were following her around because here's this cute young girl that's homeless, and that I didn't get that, of course. And they're wandering around trying to, you know, oh, I can take care of you. Why don't you come with me? And I was like, I had to make sure she stayed safe. It was very interesting, the dynamic change. But there were people that were just really cool. Like I met this one girl, and she was actually really cute. She's like, I'll buy you lunch, come with me. And I was like, I'm on an assignment. I can't, but I kind of wanted to, you know, and it would have been really interesting. So that's an example of something I did, and it was a blast. And like I said before, I used to go out One day I just decided to say hi to 100 people one day. And that's where the 100 highs came from. I'd never done it before. And it was me and Robbie, and we just went out and started doing it. And we kind of made it up as we went. At first, it was really nervous. Actually, it didn't start with highs, it started with stops. We decided one day to stop 100 people and have a conversation with 100 people. And so we both did it that day all the way into the night, and it took us a long time. Later, 100 stops only took an hour and a half after we relaxed and got calmed down. And then I think one day I did 400 stops in one day, 400 highs and stops mixed together. Then I started doing stuff like getting signatures from people where it was more like, what do you think of me? Like, write on this piece of paper what you think of me, and I'll keep it covered. And then I would talk to people, hey, can you tell me what your first 3 thoughts about me were? And I'd hand them the piece of paper and have them write all that down, and then I'd cover it up. So I'll promise them I'm not gonna read it for an hour. And then I go to the next person. Then at the end of that hour, you read all the comments that people said about you. Like, you might see stuff like handsome, but you also might see stuff like creepy, or trying to sell me something, or weird shit like this. And then that gives you something more to release on. Worrying about what people think of you and then actually seeing what they think of you is often very different. So that gives you some examples. There's more out there. If I dug deep enough, I'm sure I'd find a lot more. Cool. Any other questions? Cool. So for somebody that's just trying to break their apathy and emotion, that's having trouble feeling, that's trying to break out of that shell.
I don't know, someone who's already broken out of it, but like they're feeling so much emotion.
They're overwhelmed by the emotion. So when you're in apathy, you're kind of numbed out. So any of you out there that are very numbed out and having a lot of problems feeling emotions, that's a sign of apathy or an apathetic energy. It's one of the lowest energies. It's a protective mechanism of the body that the body uses to keep you safe when the emotions become overwhelming and you don't have a way to process them. When you come out of the apathy, you start to go into grief. This energy of emotion and pain and all these emotions that you've been storing down start to come up, and that's where a lot of crying starts to happen. And it's overwhelming. And so that's what he's asking about. How do you deal with that? I just went through a grief phase. I'm processing some new stuff in my life as a new age of my life is coming up, and some deep stuff started to come up that I didn't know was buried in there. And how I deal with the grief, the old me looks for a distraction for the grief. Go watch movies, eat a bunch of junk food. That would be the old me. No, I never did the alcohol thing, and never worked for me. Drink a bunch of rock stars, drink a bunch of caffeine. That was the old me. The new me says, okay, there's grief there. How do I go deeper into it? And I'm gonna let it come up, I'm gonna let it overwhelm me, but then I'm gonna watch it from the observer perspective. So I'm gonna sit there, and if this question is gonna create more grief, it's gonna cause the pain to come up, I ask it. And then I sit there and I breathe with it and process it, knowing that there's an end to it. If you don't know there's an end to the grief, of course you don't wanna do it. But if you know there's an end to that grief, like at 20 minutes of solid grieving, a lot of emotion coming up, and you can really just ride it like riding a wave, that you're gonna get a huge relief, then wouldn't you do it rather than hold that for years? And that's the key, is I know that in about 10 to 20 minutes, I'm gonna get a breakthrough. I'm gonna start to relax, I'm gonna start to open. That doesn't mean more grief won't come up, but that grief will come up and be a lot smaller than the initial bout of grief. So I ask questions to invite it up. What a good example of this is Hawkins talks about it, is let's say you're breaking up with somebody and you haven't dealt with that breakup. It could be a breakup from 10 years ago. It could be abandonment from your mother, but it's unresolved and it starts to come up and you're starting to feel that grief. The question I would ask is, what does this person give me? Or what is that person supplying to me that if I lost them, that I would feel I couldn't supply for myself? I couldn't give to myself. If I lose this person, what is it that they were giving me before I lost them that I now feel like I'm losing by losing them? And that question would bring up more grief. It doesn't have to be a person. It could be a belief system. It could be a job. It could be a lot of things. If you really identify with your career and your whole career goes to shit and you get fired, maybe you were going to be the president of the company or something, that can cause a huge amount of attachment issues, like the attachment to the job, and then a huge grieving stage. So asking that question, what was this job giving me, my ego, that I feel like I can't supply to myself internally? And it could be status, it could be a sense of being important, it could be power, it could be money. And these are all things that you feel like you need from that job. And as I release and process and welcome all that emotion up and all the pain, I keep welcoming it up and then surrendering it a little bit at a time. That's the faster I get through it. And then there's this stage at the where it's all kind of done, where you start to relax and you start to get more conscious control over the process. But first, you got to kind of let it come out of you. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions? Go for it, Anthony.
So I'm coming out of apathy, and I can feel it because I noticed that every little thing either makes me upset or makes me want to cry.
Okay.
Right? I'm very reactive to like any old thing. So my question is, how do you know if you are processing things and getting over them, or you're actually just starting to numb out again? Like for instance, like anger. If you go through enough anger, how do you know if you're getting over it, or if you're just going back into that apathetic mode towards it?
I always assume I'm moving forward, because you will go up and down for a while. So just so you know, he's asking how when you're coming out of apathy, which is the heaviest emotion, and you're climbing the emotional scale, how do you know you're not going backwards and repressing? And I don't have my board here, but what I would do, for you guys to understand what we're talking about, there's a base scale: apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, pride, courage, acceptance, peace. And some people put love and then peace in there. And so that's as you climb the emotional scale in any given area of your life. Your relationship to the lower energies, apathy, grief, and fear, usually causes a lot of problems in your life. If you're in that state if you're in that relationship, if you're in that relationship to women, it's gonna be really hard to date. If you're in that relationship to getting a job, it's gonna be really hard to get a job. When you get up to the next group of emotions, lust, anger, pride, and courage, then you tend to be more motivated to take action. You push more, you make things happen, you go for it. When you get into the higher stages, acceptance, love, and peace, then things tend to become pretty easy. That guy that's just kind of happy all the time, flowing, and life just kind of works for him, that's who's up there usually, at least in the area that we're talking about. So in his case, he's coming out of apathy, he's been going through a lot, and you're going into grief, and you're starting to feel all these emotions. As long as you're still processing and you're still working, you're not going backwards. You might hit it's like a layered cake. You might hit more layers of apathy. You might go up to anger, back to apathy, and you keep releasing, and eventually you'll climb up and out, right? Start making the picture broader and bigger, and start to look at a bigger, broader picture so you can see more, which will help you to release faster. And with time, you'll release faster and faster as you feel and meditate on and release on these energies. So that's beautiful. If you stop though, and you just start doing stuff to numb you out, yes, then you can start to re-numb out. Like, I don't like all this pain, so I'm gonna go out and drink a bunch of alcohol, do a bunch of drugs, start smoking pot again. I'm gonna go out and spend all day masturbating to numb myself out. Any of this stuff that stops you from feeling again, all your old addictions. I've given up addiction after addiction, or thing after thing that I would use to distract myself from feeling. And stimulants were a big one for me. I loved Rockstar energy drinks at one time, and they almost destroyed me. I had to do tons of detox and cleaning up my body from them. When I was a kid, I drank tons of caffeine, soda, sugar, pizzas, and I had to clean up from that. And then it kind of moved and progressed. The last thing I've just given up in that area is caffeine. I was only drinking black coffee for a long time for caffeine, and I just gave that up too. And because even that little bit of stimulant was still hiding something underneath it. And as soon as I gave it up, a bunch more stuff came out of me. So if you keep doing the behavior, yes, you can go back. So I would say stop the behavior till you can get to a place of peace. And then if you want to go back to your whatever the distraction is and do it a little bit, you'll probably be much better off. But don't stop in the middle. Keep working on it, and you're growing. Yeah, you're gonna go up and down. It's not gonna be a straight line up. It's gonna be up to anger, up to pride, back down to some more apathy, back up. But overall, is your life getting better? Is your energy changing? Did you have a good, secure group of friends that are like a self-help group that are giving you a lot of feedback, telling you, yeah, you're looking better, you're moving in the right direction? Not some group of friends that doesn't give a fuck about your growth, but a real group that really wants to help you to be the best you can be. If you've got that, you're getting clear feedback, you're working every day, you're not going back to your vices at least too much, and you're gonna be growing. You can't help but grow. If your overall life situation is changing, the outside world is becoming different, right? More synchronicities, more stuff showing up, more opportunities showing up. That means you're climbing out of it, okay? You're welcome. Go for it, buddy.
After having so much success on this topic specifically with women, and all of a sudden it stops, and now you're starting to get some rejections more than you started out with. And of course, there's some success in it. But how do you explain the difference of polarity between that rejection versus success that you were?
You mean to say that you were getting a lot of success and now you don't understand why you're getting rejections again?
Correct.
Okay, so he started out with no success, right? Did a bunch of work, then started to get success, then started to get a lot of success, and then now you're at this place where you've got some good success, but you're getting rejections too, and you don't understand why. Okay, is there a difference? The women you're getting rejection from, are they different? In other words, let me put this a different way. In the past, when you didn't get any rejections, have you changed something from then? Like, for example, you're getting pickier about who you're dating.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've got these new group of women that you're much pickier about. You have what you're saying, these women meet more of my standards than those other women did. Do you see why you might be getting more rejections? You raise the bar on yourself. You're perceived, I'm not saying that these women are actually any better, but in your perception, the way you filter women, these women are better than these women. So these are women that I want. So there's more stories attached to these women. And so because of those stories, more of your shit's coming up and you're getting more rejected because you're processing your stories. If you went back to dating those other women, you would see less rejections again. Would you agree? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's why guys do that usually unconsciously. They make that shift to a new group and they don't realize they did it, and then they think they're going backwards. Because that shift is often made unconsciously. Did you make it unconsciously?
I think I more or less made it by choice.
But did you realize that when you made it, it was going to affect the amount of women that like you? Yeah, see, that's what I mean. That you don't see that you don't see that piece. And because why? Because you have stories around these women. Otherwise, you would have been dating them in the first place. Oh my God, these women are hotter, more successful. They have a better career. They have a better future. They could be a good wife for me. They could have my children. Oh, I got to get it right. You see what I mean? Over here, these women I'm just going to have fun with. And that changes the whole dynamic. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did that answer your question then? Yeah. Okay, good. Any other questions? Go for it.
Could you talk about some ways to process or drop sexual shame?
I'll say that one more time.
So if you have sexual shame, good ways to start facing that, processing it, moving past it.
If you have sexual shame, how do you start moving past it? Well, doing what you just did is huge. Talking about it.
I didn't want to ask that question.
Huh?
I didn't want to ask that question.
Yeah, so that's huge. Because most guys that don't have sexual shame aren't afraid to talk about sex. Because I'll sit in this room and I'll do a thing where I'll give a talk about sex. Like, how many of you are comfortable with sex? Y'all raise your hand. I'll say, okay, then start telling me about your fantasies. And then all of a sudden, well, like here with everybody? Yeah, everybody. Let's hear it. I thought you said you didn't have sexual shame. Let's hear it. Let's hear you talk about things, as a guy with other guys that you think is sexy, things you want to do, and all of a sudden they freak out. So getting around a safe group and being able to put out what you want to do sexually, experiences you want to have, things you want to feel and see, everything around sex, being able to talk about it is important without turning it into something where your buddies mock you. And so getting a safe group to do that with, or getting within a safe group that talks about sex. There's a lot of safe groups out there, even within Meetup, where they talk about sex, and go out and have that conversation where you start to realize it's okay. Especially getting around and talking about sex with women and realizing that the more comfortable you get in your body, the less they mind talking about it. When you're uncomfortable, they don't mind. So getting out and doing that too, finding women you can have that conversation with. And that's why these safe groups that love to talk about sex are really good. Meditations that open up this area of the body, the turn on area, and starting to feel it. And then walking around in your turn on a little bit. Go out and you do some meditations to step into your turn on, get yourself turned on in some way, then walk around and enjoy your turn on. Okay? Because what is turn on but creative energy? Doesn't your turn on lead to creating a baby? It's the most creative thing in the world. Well, the most successful people in the world are turned on all the time. They're turned on when they're creating a business. They're turned on when they're creating art. They're fucking whatever they want into being energetically, in a sense. So because of that turn on creates, doesn't just create a baby, it creates business, it creates art, it creates ideas, it creates all kinds of stuff. So go out, get yourself turned on, and then sit in it for a bit. Sit in a Starbucks, just a little turned on, aroused, and get comfortable with it. And then see if you can have a conversation with somebody. Eventually, you'll disassociate your turn on from just sex. You'll start to associate it with all kinds of stuff. You know, you might start to associate this warm, fuzzy feeling that is turn on with the artwork you're doing in that moment. And you'll get really creative with your artwork because it is creative energy. You might start to associate it with the business you're building. And then you get really creative in that business because that's inviting the creative energy in, right? The heart energy is the compassion, the love, the curiosity, but the turn on, that's the whole nother level of energy, right? It's a different level. So I would also say going through stuff like we talked about, Garrison talked about would be great. You know, taking a program like that and having a group you can discuss it with, like having a forum where people can discuss that stuff, or a group like a safe group here. Getting into Fearless is huge because you can have these discussions. When we do work in Romania, we'll probably play a lot, especially with you, with some of the sexual stuff. We'll have you working with the models, getting real deep into this stuff and talking about stuff and bringing up your shit and all kind. They'll be asking you questions and we'll be digging stuff out. So that's another way. Is if you get into the workshop, especially the advanced stuff, we're gonna dig at that stuff, and we're gonna look for the places where you're kind of hiding your sexual shame, and we're gonna be feeling are you willing to stand in front of this woman, enjoying her with some turn on, and you're gonna notice she's not gonna get mad. That's very different than being lecherous. Okay. Because turn on is a natural part of life. Okay, cool. Thank you. Any other questions?
I wanted to ask you last week, because I was going through some stuff, it was a phase, but you were doing the same thing, you were giving a live, answering questions, and like, I can't remember the question itself, but I think it's like, you know how we manifest things, like sometimes, for me, like it was mostly forceful, you know, I was like.
You were forcing your manifestations into being. Right.
So, you know, and the other thing is like sometimes people will feel me like I talked about in the past. So it's like that forcingness. And, you know, I thought like giving up and all that stuff.
Yeah, you force a lot.
Yeah. So, like I said, my question was based around that, and I was able to let it go.
Okay. So you don't want to know the answer?
If you'd like to share.
Well, what's the specific question is what? How does forcing...
How can I allow myself to be more natural? You know, like just...
You gotta release, you gotta meditate, you gotta process. You gotta learn apathy, grief, and fear. Typically, what's the point? This is gonna be hard. Oh, it's scary. I don't know if I wanna do it. You know, okay? Lust, anger, pride, that's the forcing, and courage, that's the forcing energies. The lower you are on those emotional scales, the more you're gonna force. I want it so bad, and you're gonna tend to push it away. Okay, and then anger, I'm gonna make it happen. Pride, you can tend to manifest a little bit more in pride. You see a lot of successful people in pride. Pride is a win-lose energy, so it does have a downside. Courage tends to be a win-win energy. There's still some forcing in that, but things tend to work because you're like that motivative guy. You're like, hey, I'm gonna go make this happen. And then acceptance and peace, there's no more forcing. It's just kind of like, hey, let's do this. It's easy. So those guys that like Richard Branson that manifest stuff easily and tend to do things on average really well, there's periods in their lives when they were forcing, but then later in their life, it just starts to flow. Everything starts to flow because they're up in those upper energies. Becoming really honest about where you're at with the thing you're working with emotionally. I'm gonna say that again. Becoming really honest about where on that scale you're at in relationship to what you wanna work with. You tend to, you mind if I say this on camera? You tend to lie to yourself. You tend to tell yourself you're at one emotion, which is what a lot of people do, but you're really at another emotion. And you're state pumping or pushing yourself and thinking if I put on a happy face, then it'll happen. But you can't fake it. Faking it till you make it doesn't work. Not in this way. The only way that works is if it's just a little off. Like you're just your energy's here and you want to go one notch up, I can fake that till I make it. But if you're trying to jump all the way up the scale, it doesn't work. You got to go back down and get honest and then climb the scale naturally for real. Okay? You've seen that guy with the fake smile on his face walking around all day. Hey, I'm happy. And everybody knows he's not. Okay? I'm not saying you're completely depressed, but what I'm saying is that there's stuff going on underneath all the, hey, I can make it happen. This is good. Let's do it. And you're not acknowledging what's underneath it and dealing with it. Or if you do it for a day and then you go back and say, okay, now I'm happy again. No, that's not the way it works. If you talk to any of the guys in here who are really like Eddie, who's manifesting tons of stuff right now, he's really changing every part of his life and he's bringing all these opportunities into his life. It's because he went down and dug all that stuff up and did it exactly what we told him to do. And it took a while, right? But in the scheme of your whole life, how long you've been burying stuff, not really. But in the scheme of, several months of really deep work, maybe even longer, it really had a change. And his life started to grow, right, a little bit at a time. Okay. And is that true with everybody in here who's done this work, right? Raise your hand if you've done that deeper work where okay. And that's what we're talking about, okay? You've been here just as long, but you don't want to do that deep work. And so I'm waiting for you to decide you want to do that deep work, like all these guys, okay? And then we can do some work, okay? But you keep trying to fake it. Hey, I'm happy, I'm good. And that's where your challenge is. So that may not have been the answer you wanted to hear. Okay, but there it is. Okay, is that the last question or we got any more? Go for it, Joe.
Okay, if you have a higher, like one of the cap emotions intertwined with something like control or manipulation or something like that, is there an easier way to kind of untwirl it or pull it apart? Because I was just like...
So cap emotions being courage, acceptance, peace, or courage, acceptance, love, peace. When you're feeling those energies and that state in relation to what you're working on. When you've got that intertwined with what?
With like manipulate, like if you have love and it feels like it's intertwined with like control or manipulation or something like kind of negative.
I don't see how you can have real love and be trying to control someone. You can't have real love for somebody and be controlling them. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't mix. So that's probably not real love. You're probably telling yourself that's love.
Okay.
Either that or trying to see if there could be a want on there. A want for love. Go ahead.
If I try to bring up love, then I feel like control is kind of comes up with it. You know, like welcome up love. And then something like control or manipulation or whatever kind of rears its head and is kind of intertwined in there.
What do you mean by that? I can hear what you're saying, but you mean the feeling that you want to use love to control? The feeling that you're being controlled by love?
Like being loved to me has a control issue on it or a control.
Yeah, so that's why the love doesn't stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got to release on the concept of love.
Okay.
And release on love itself. Like release on the concepts and all the controls you have around love, but then release on love itself. Let love go. Because you can't actually bring it into your life if you don't let it go first. Does that help you?
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so release on all your concepts, because all concepts will fail you. All concepts will fail you. You've got to get beneath the concepts. Anthony was watching Hawkins the other day, and he said something, what are the symptoms that this word, like if you look at this word, love, what are the symptoms of real love? And can you feel those symptoms? Those symptoms don't have a concept or labels to them. That's what you want to drop all the labels and get to the symptoms. And that's much more powerful. Even releasing itself, drop the label releasing. Release on that itself and realize that all this is just something some guy was feeling his emotion, said, oh, if I do this feels a little better. I'm going to call that a system and call it releasing. And then this feels a little better if I do it again. And then all you were trying to get the system perfect when that was how his body felt at the time. All he's doing is describing what he felt and went through, as all systems. Okay, so you got to ultimately throw out the concept of the system itself and get to the feelings underneath, because they may be different for you. That's what feeling's about. That's why our overriding principle of Fearless is getting into feeling, which is more important than any system. The system will ultimately fail you at some point. So you have to get to feeling, because feeling will guide you. Like you're riding that surfer on a wave, is feeling the wave, and he's adjusting all his muscles and all his feet and all his everything to adjust to the wave the whole time. And he's super in tune with the core of his body to be able to stay on that board perfectly and make all those little adjustments. He can't think about that. That can't be a concept. The moment it's a concept, he falls off that board. And so that's why feeling is so important. We got to get deep into feeling so that we can keep adjusting the system to be right for us, ultimately throwing the system out. I mean, to the point where you throw it out completely and you're just, think about dancers, man. They start with their steps and they're trying to get, oh, okay, I don't know how to step. And then eventually they start to get better with the steps and they're doing it, and now they're in time and rhythm, but they look kind of awkward. And eventually they throw out all the steps and they got jazz syncopations and they're flying and they're flowing and they're just feeling each other. And that's the ultimate goal, is to get that point where they're feeling and moving off of each other and feeling each other's bodies. Well, that's the same thing in talking and communication. That's the same thing in everything. Ultimately get to the point where you can feel and flow. Okay? Awesome. Yeah.
So the alignment, that was my question more, is the alignment. How can I align? Because I know what to do, it's I know, sometimes my body knows, but the reaction or the action, I'm not getting the results. I know that's part of where my question is coming from.
What's the question?
The question is, how do I, for example, if, some people, we release on money, we release on things like that. In my case, it's getting things done that, I know, it need to get done. Whether simple things or, the large things. But simple things, I'll get it done.
What? But you're giving me a story. What's the question?
Well, like I said, I think it was last week, I wondered, I really wanted to ask the question was, how can I manifest the things that I want in my life?
By getting into alignment. There's nothing more important than you be happy in relationship to what you want. I mean, really happy, not fake happy, not pretend happy, not putting on a smiley face just to say everything's good, but really being happy. There's nothing more important than, how did Abraham, nothing more important than being blasted. How did you say it?
There's no blasted thing but to get happy now.
Yeah, there's no blasted thing but to get happy. And to understand, I'll give you one more, to understand what expectancy feels like. If you can isolate the feeling of expectancy, you can even bring stuff into your life even when you're not happy, ultimately, right? In the middle energies, you're gonna have a fight, and then eventually you'll bring something in. In the bottom energies, you'll push them away. Like apathy, grief, and fear, those emotions, energies, feelings, you're gonna ultimately push everything away you're focusing on. Lust, anger, pride, courage, the lower the emotion, the more work you're gonna have to do, but you can bring stuff into your life, right? You have to work. Acceptance, love, and peace, stuff will come into your life pretty easily in relation to what you're dealing with. So in one area might be high on the scale in your life, and relationships and your business might be low, or might be the other way around. So that's the answer. So why are you looking for a different answer? You're looking for a way around that?
No, I'm just looking
Because you don't see it. Yeah. Because you're still hiding from the lower emotions that are stored in your body. Remember, I just gave you that answer. There's something under the surface of the face and smile you give me that you're not acknowledging. And I can see it right now as I say that. It pisses you off a little bit.
No, you're right, because that's exactly, that's what I'm like, okay. Because like I said earlier, the question is reference to what part of the question is from.
Yeah.
So that's why I was now I'm just there
Yeah. So I'm trying, you got to get beneath and figure out what you're really feeling. And we've worked on this a little bit, and I see it a little bit, but there's more going on that you want to let go of that's under the surface, and you don't want to go there. So you're looking for every way around, but the direct path through.
It's down.
Yeah, right through it. You got to go right through it, man. And you can look for the rest of your life. That's what a lot of people do. Spend their whole life looking for a way around having to feel to work out these emotions, to climb higher on the scale, and they look to go around, but they won't go through. But if you go through, that's the answer. There is no round. If you make a round work through a really good high quality state pump, it's gonna crash again. You gotta go through and clean up your energy, okay? So you literally have to change your emotional state, that's what I mean by that, in relation to what you're dealing with. You can't fake your way to the top. I can't tell you how many people state pump themselves up, I'm gonna do it, and try to fake their way to the top in an area. And then if they get there, they crash back down or they never get there at all because there's so much weighing them down under the surface. It can't be done. Okay, thank you. Cool. Okay, is there any one last question? Ask it.
I feel like when I came to you, very beginning, I felt like I was kind of very, very negative. And I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do.
And I can say
You were running away from the work all the time.
And I can say that for the most part, I think I've had my successes and I'm climbing up the.
Oh yeah, you've made huge changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and but I think in general I'm kind of like a mixed bag of emotions. I got my ups and downs. And
Yeah, because you're in that middle area right now.
great.
Yeah. Whereas before you were in the bottom. You were in apathy, grief, and fear before. Now you're in more of lust, anger, pride, courage. You're playing in that area.
Yeah, and all right. So then I feel that like still a lot of things can still trigger me, and I think it's very easy for me to fall back down into sadness and grief.
Yeah, but then you come back pretty quick now. Whereas before you used to stay there for a long time, right?
Right, and I think when we talk about stories, I think one of the biggest stories from my childhood is like my mortality and death, and
Yeah.
just of the
From
week.
childhood, you used to talk about mortality and death.
Yeah.
Was that a family thing? I mean, why were you talking about that? I'm just curious.
Why?
Yeah.
When I was younger, my father used to take me to go see my cousins in Palmdale. So we drive up to 14 and late at night. So I was past time. I would like look into the skies. I guess pretty dorky, but yeah, I would do that, and I would just think about death a lot.
Okay.
And it gets pretty dark.
Yeah, it does.
I don't want to go into.
Well, yeah, that's true. You're focusing on shutting off. That's what death is. It's a turning off.
Yeah, and so I guess.
Not really. In the end, it's an awakening. Everything's like the phoenix. But keep going. What do you got?
Right. It's not often that I think about this and I get really into these like negative emotions. And then when I do, I just sit into it. Like I sit in it and I let those emotions come up and just let them be there and acknowledge them.
Okay.
Is there anything else? Like for them to pass, is there anything else that you would say I can do to pass that? Because I feel like, apathy, like instead apathy is an emotion, and you walk around with it. And
well, there's one of the key wants in cleaning up your energy is the want for security, which is the want for survival. It's the want not to die, or some cases the want to die because you want everything to shut off. You want all the pain to stop. So that's one of the key, right? So when our ego gets created, there's a sense of separation first. And then from that sense of separation, there's the want to survive. It's born out of that. Before the sense of separation, I'm a little baby, I'm laying there, I'm playing, I'm doing my thing, and everything feels, I don't know the difference between me and everything else. But then suddenly I get this sense of me and out there. And in that moment, there's a sense of separation, a feeling separate from everything else. And in that moment, the first fear is created, which creates the want to survive, right? So there's a little part of you that was playing with that want as a child. It's the core want that a lot of humans, as they meditate, they're going through meditation and healing, and they got to deal with that a lot. And so welcoming it is important. Welcoming it and then welcoming the other side. Because you have a story about it. A lot of people don't. Some people don't have as much of a story about it. They look at it like whatever. Other people do. So can you welcome the part of you that wants to survive right now, that wants to stay alive? And notice what that feels like. Feel your heart. Ask your heart to open. And just welcome it. Okay? And then welcome the part of yourself that is alive, that's thriving, that has an amazing life already. I mean, look where you live. Can you welcome the part of yourself that's thriving as much as it is? There's the much as that you can see that. Just sit with it. And then go back and welcome the part of yourself that wants not to die. And feel all the fears and all the stories and everything that's coming up with that. And just kind of look at them. And then welcome the part of yourself again that's thriving as much as you are. And notice what that feels like. And then welcome the part of yourself that wants to stay alive, that wants to survive as much as you do. And then welcome the part of yourself that wants to survive and thrive as much as you are. And the part of yourself that wants to survive. And the part of yourself that is surviving, that is thriving. It's doing really well. And what do you feel when you look back and forth at those two?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of fear. And
Okay, that's what you...
what makes me throughout the day is to make the best of it.
Right. But see, that's what you're avoiding the fear. There's an end to that fear. Can you welcome the fear up? Again, welcome the part of yourself that wants to survive, and welcome all the fear that comes with that, all the emotions, all the sensations, all the thoughts, pictures, and images. And notice what that feels like. Then ask yourself, can you let some of that go? Even 1%, can you let a little of that go? Can you let all of it go? There you go. What do you feel? Do you feel yourself? What do you feel as I ask that question?
Full tense.
Good. Can you let some of that go? And some more. And some more. Keep opening your heart. There you go. And some more. And some more. And even more. And can you welcome up more of that fear? And that part of you that wants to survive? And can you welcome that into your body and notice what that feels like? And all the pictures and thoughts and images that go with that. And can you let that go? Just a little bit at a time. And can you let some more go? And even more? And more? And more? And even more? And do you feel yourself getting lighter? Are you going more into fear? Which is it?
Yeah, now I feel lighter.
Good. So do you see if you keep getting lighter like that with that process, how long until you've moved through a ton of it or all of it really? Do you see what I'm talking about?
Well, I mean, what I wanted to add to that is I feel that one thing that drives me throughout my day, one thing that helps me out with interactions, it's a very, very heavy and a very negative, it can be a very horrible topic. And one of the reasons why I said that is because for me, I feel it transcends with people. I always want to, whenever I make an approach, I always want to set them off with the best intentions and always trying to bring people up.
Yeah.
Because I think a part of me sees people growing old and aging, and I do want to see like the best. Because
Yeah, because you're afraid to grow old. So you're projecting onto other people and trying to make them happy. Everything you're doing is a projection onto other people. So you got to keep releasing on this fear of growing old. That's what we were just doing. This fear of dying. That's what your body wants to do. It wants to let that go, but you won't let it. Because you keep analyzing it, you keep processing it. And so every time we bring it up, I don't want to hear the story. I want to see us letting it go. Right? Do you want to let more of it go? Do you get, what payoffs do you get from having it? Do you enjoy kind of mulling it over from time to time? Is there a little part of you that gets a certain satisfaction over thinking about death?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got to let that go too. Because as long as you're getting the satisfaction, why would your ego let go of thinking about this all the time?
It's not all the time I'm saying that.
Well,
Most time that
whether it is or isn't, it's not important. It's the fact that it bothers you, whether it's occasionally or all the time, right? It's happening enough that you brought it up in here, right? So do you want to move through it or not? So you can't even answer that question with easily, can you? Do you understand? We're not going back into it right now because we're gonna end the video, but we can keep working through this. But you got to decide if it's something you want to work through. Do you want to work through it? This is that you will not release this if you don't want to work through it. So there's no point in doing more work until you decide it's something you want to work on.
yes.
Okay. Do you want to let it go?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Notice up until now you couldn't give me a yes. Every time I asked that question, you'd sit and think about it. You see what I'm saying? A lot of you guys do this. You hold on to a topic. You're getting so much payoff from having it. You're not sure you want to let it go. You identify with it. It's part of who you are. You've had it since childhood. Why would you let it go? You got to release all those payoffs. What am I getting from this? A sense of satisfaction about talking about it. I get to have this discussion with people. It's deep and philosophical. It's what are the reasons that I want to hold on to this? And ultimately, release those reasons and then go back and release on the problem itself. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So we're going to end here because this is a deeper topic and we have to dig a lot deeper, and it's it's a really deep topic. So I want to acknowledge you for bringing it up, but you have to get to the point where you want to go through it and not just talk about it. Okay, and that's perfect. And I think you did a great job. So I appreciate it. So everybody out there, I want to acknowledge you for being on the call, and I want to invite you to comment and ask your questions. We love your comments. It's where we get a lot of our questions from for the next Fearless Man Q&As. Well, next week we're going to be going back into the standard Q&A process. So make sure you get your questions in. You can also make sure to like the video and make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And with that said, remember, only the confident really live. Take care.